You are listening to the 90 Days Later podcast with Anna Charles, episode 80. Welcome to the 90 Days Later podcast, where I show you how to stop over drinking in 90 days without missing out on life. If you're not an alcoholic, but fed up with saying yes to a drink when you mean to say no, you're in the right place. Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. All right, so today I want to talk about the impact of alcohol on sleep, as I think it's one of those areas where we tend to get wedded to our stories and our beliefs about who we are and what we do, and really about how drinking shows up in our lives. Now, back in the day, I had lots and lots and lots of interrupted sleep. Although I never used to say that I needed alcohol to sleep, as I know some of you, or many of you in fact do. Despite that, I did have actually very poor sleep, right? Because my experience of falling asleep was to fall asleep on the sofa during the evening, and that became a repeat pattern, and most definitely part of how the overdrinking habit unfolded for me. So I'd cook dinner, and that was my go-to time to start drinking. That's when the white wine would come out. And then we'd continue to drink wine with dinner. And by the time that was all cleared away, you could pretty much give me another 30 to 60 minutes and I would be asleep. I'd be asleep, right, on the sofa in the middle of the evening. And this also happened if we would go out to dinner and then on to the cinema. Yes, we'd buy tickets for a film that we wanted to see. And I was pretty much guaranteed to fall asleep at about the 60 to 70 minute mark in the film. So that meant I would often miss the critical point in the film when everything, got really exciting and then all the ends were tied up. And I would often wake up when the credits were rolling, right? The music would happen and that would wake me up. So then I would have to draw my husband into conversation about the film on the way home, as I was super embarrassed about having fallen asleep without directly asking exactly what happened. And I did that so often I was worried he'd see the pattern, and I tried to hide it, so I just end up reading about the film on Wikipedia or some other source later, right? So we go out for this wonderful evening, and because I'd had too much to drink, I would miss half of it. I did this on repeat. It definitely became a part of how the habit showed up for me. And as for doing anything else in the evenings, maybe playing a game or even reading a book or working on my novel, well, forget it, right? I was just too groggy and sleepy. So I was, in effect, losing 3 hours or more of my life every evening to this sort of unnecessary, drowsy, horrible sleep. And that was just the start of it, right? Because I'd fall asleep, then wake up to go to bed. And even if I managed to get back to sleep, when I was in bed, it would invariably be fitful. I spent many 3 a.m.s Googling what was wrong with me and asking was I ever going to change, only to wake up in the morning feeling groggy and swearing it had to end now before picking the behaviour right back up at 6 o'clock that evening. Now, I'm not a scientist, but I have informed myself on the relationship between alcohol and sleep. And it's absolutely clear there are a number of factors as to why alcohol is going to lead to a hit or miss night's sleep. To start with, it's a diuretic, which means you need to go to the loo more often, or for those who aren't from the UK, you're going to need to go to the toilet more. And that also means you're going to sweat more at night, right? If you've been drinking, so you're going to feel dehydrated, and then it's going to wake you up, and then you're going to have a drink of water, right, to cope with the dehydration, and that's going to mean you're going to need to go to the toilet more as a result of that. It acts as a barrier to REM sleep, and when you have less of that, that's the part of the sleep cycle that deals with dreaming and processing memories and emotions. Well, if you interrupt your sleep cycles and you don't go into those deeper stages of sleep, you're likely going to wake up feeling less than par. You're going to wake up feeling groggy, or at least not firing on all cylinders. All right, so there's lots of physical reasons why drinking and sleep are not a good idea. But you're smart people. You probably know this already. And that's part of how this shows up for people, right? We say things, look, I know logically that alcohol doesn't help me to sleep, but I just carry on doing it regardless because I seem to think it does, even though I know it doesn't, right? It doesn't make sense. But I'm going to explain why it absolutely makes sense to your brain to continue doing this, but why that doesn't have to be something that you go along with. But first, I want to talk about how we refer to ourselves and sleep. So if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, and if you haven't heard all the previous episodes, I encourage you to do so. But then you'll know me that I'm not that much into categories and labels, right? Things like saying I'm moderate, sober, or drunk, extrovert, introvert, right? I just don't find that labels helps us. And this labeling seeps into how we talk about ourselves and sleep. People will say things like, well, I'm a good sleeper, or I'm a bad sleeper. And if we're in that second category, we can feel pretty down about ourselves, right? We kind of treat it almost as though it's a character trait. In line with, I'm 5'4", I have brown hair, I'm a bad sleeper. So first, I want to recognize that's what we say. That might indeed be our experience of sleep. But how does that make you feel, by the way, right? So if I were to go around saying that, for me, it feels a bit helpless. Like, I'm a bad sleeper. It's kind of like I've got this cross I have to bear. Woe is me. And then you add alcohol into the mix and we start to attribute some responsibility to alcohol for getting us to sleep. This can feel frustrating because, like I said, logically, we know that drinking doesn't actually help how we sleep, yet we still look to it for that. And then we get mad at ourselves for thinking in that way, and it can feel like we're stuck in this loop. But not content with that, we then add to this conundrum, right? We prove to ourselves that we're a bad sleeper. We'll seek lots of evidence for this. It's never something you've really been able to do, we'll say. It's not like my husband or my sister or my brother or my friend, and they can all fall asleep at the drop of a hat, but I can't. And then we judge ourselves. Why can't I be more like them? So, if that's you, I want you to drop talking about yourself as a bad sleeper. Because has it helped? Does it help you? Has it initiated change? If not, right, then what have you got to lose by just dropping that? And in its place, I don't want you to go to, well, everything's la, 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 lovely and positive, I'm a brilliant sleeper. No, our brains will resist that. So instead, I would like you to consider, I'm a human. Sometimes I sleep well, sometimes I don't. Because even if you could prove to me that you sleep badly more often than not, how does that thinking serve you? How does it make you curious for other solutions to ask what might work for you? Right? Exactly. So that's the first thing. Drop any bad sleeper talk and go to, I'm human. Sometimes I sleep well, sometimes I don't. Next, I want to talk about control. I talk a lot in my work about what we control, and I teach people to take action from there. Right? But here's the thing about sleep. Sleep is actually not something that you have immediate control over. Sleep is a bit like breathing. You can do things to improve it, you can do things to help it, but you cannot will yourself to stop breathing, just like you can't will yourself to fall asleep. Yes, you can improve your sleep hygiene. You can instigate protocols like no screens before bed, have a night routine, I like a cup of hot milk, and so on. And you've likely investigated it all if you have a thing with sleep, if you've gone around saying you're a bad sleeper. And some or all of these things will certainly help. But again, you don't directly control actually falling asleep. I want you to pause for a moment and really take that on board. And even if your brain goes to, well, I sleep when I drink, I want you to see if that is a fact or a story. I've talked about facts and stories a lot on the podcast, and whether repeating this kind of story is actually helping you, especially if this is something you want to stop doing. And even if you could tell me, yes, I fall asleep when I drink, You don't have a glass of wine and then fall asleep, do you? Because sleep isn't something you have direct conscious control of. It might happen a short while after, but it's not, not like press this button and the light flashes. Have the drink and you fall asleep. Here's why this is vitally important. One of the things I do with my clients is to have them see just how much they actually control when it comes to changing their drinking. I see such importance in this because I think we get so used to talking about being triggered and about what our friends are doing and the thoughtlessness of our spouse, or railing against happy hour, or how society makes us feel like social pariahs when we're not drinking, or even just wanting to drink less, right? All this is happening to us. We feel out of control. So when it comes to sleep, it's pointless to think we do control it, but here's the piece that we do control. You control how you feel when you're lying awake, unable to sleep. Next, I want to offer that not all sleepless or fitfully sleepless nights are created equal. If you're lying awake because you're going on a long-awaited holiday in the morning, or it's Christmas tomorrow, you're getting married, or you're going to surprise your parents with a lovely party, you likely aren't going to be feeling too unhappy or bad. In fact, you may be actually keeping yourself awake, imagining in advance all the wonderful things you're really looking forward to and that you're going to experience, right? You may actually relish being awake and being able to experience all these good feelings ahead of time. I know that's certainly something I do a fair amount. Now you may say, ooh, I can't sleep because I'm so excited. And then we feel bad about that? Nope. Now I want you to compare that to when you're lying awake thinking all the doom and gloom thoughts that come knocking at 3 a.m. Right? Then you're going to lose your job. This is going to happen. You're worried about money. You're worried about your children. You're worried about this. You're worried about that. You're going to get to the job interview on time. That the bus is going to be on strike. All of that stuff. Right? It's the same situation. You're lying awake in bed at night when you would want to be sleeping, but it's a totally different experience. And the cool thing is that we are the ones controlling the difference because we are the ones having the thoughts about it. So when it comes to sleep, the key is being able to change how you feel when you're lying awake, being able to change how you think about the circumstances of being awake. Right? This can change everything, because if your thoughts in that moment are creating stress or anxiety or despair or overwhelm, it's going to make it harder for you to fall asleep, not easier. Now, this is something that you can do something about. You can take action on. So here's a question for you to consider. How do you want to be thinking about yourself and your ability to sleep when this happens to you? Do you want to be judging yourself? Do you want to be saying, I did this to myself again through drinking too much, why can't I ever learn? Now, has that approach ever helped? Either in the moment to fall asleep or later to actually change the overall habit? No. That's why you're listening to this podcast. So how about trying something different? Even if you can't sleep, for instance, you can practice doing some deep breathing. Now, for all of you who are saying, that deep breathing thing again, I'm no good at that. I'm no good at listening to my breath and all that meditation malarkey. Well, if that's you, you can still concentrate on lying still. That might be a good first step. And that was actually a big one for me, right? Because when I get into an antsy night of not sleeping, I'm fidgeting all over the place, right? Lying on my side, twisting up and down, front, back, kicking my legs. And if you're someone who's always on the go, this next piece is going to be good for you. Just deciding to lie still can make a huge difference. Even if you just focus on keeping your feet still. I sometimes personally have to go that specific, even when I'm not drinking now. I still have these kind of fitful night's sleep. So I can go to something that specific. And then you can focus in on your senses. The feeling of your body on the mattress. Feel your nightshirt against your skin. Take joy from the feeling of your body being supported in bed. By just being still, you are giving your body an opportunity to relax. And so what if it's not top quality REM sleep? You're still there. You're You're still breathing and you are still resting. You're still giving your body some of what it's seeking, right? Which is rest. I always think of those Borg things in the Star Trek, right? The Borg villains or creatures, whatever species, when they go to sleep, right, and how they plug into those pod things. Now, I don't watch Star Trek myself. My husband loves sci-fi, so I've seen it on in the background. But it's like that when we can't sleep, right? We're plugged in because we're lying in bed, but we haven't switched the regeneration machine on because we haven't fallen asleep yet, but we're plugged in and we're ready. So that's the first thing. Now, the next thing that you control when you're lying there, awake, even if you're sort of sinking into, you're aware of the feeling of resting, there are the stories we tell ourselves when we're lying there, right? That, oh, I'm such a bad sleeper stories. Oh, here we go again, sleep stories, right? So here's what I want you to do when you're next in that situation. If you have one of those thoughts, just let it come, then let it go. Aha, there's that thought again. There's that thought about a drink helping me to sleep. Then I want you to watch the thought drift off to be replaced by another. It will. Guaranteed it will. Our thoughts come and our thoughts go. Which ones we pay attention to is totally optional. Another thing we like to do at moments like this when we're lying awake is to catastrophize as what's going to be that impact of not sleeping on the next day, right? I'm not sleeping and tomorrow it's going to be so much worse. I've got all this to do, I've got that to do and all the other. It's already a lot and now I'm making it worse for myself. Why can't I never learn? And just this kind of thinking can make us feel bad as it feels that we're actively aiding us having a bad day tomorrow, right? So it's not bad enough that we're here not sleeping. It's not bad enough that we got ourselves into this situation through over drinking, but now we're going to make tomorrow a nightmare too. I used to do this a lot ahead of long journeys, right? I've got to drive a long way tomorrow and that's tiring enough. I'm now going to make it worse by not sleeping. I'm going to be even tireder. It's going to be a disaster. A disaster. I used to use that word a lot. Now we say all this as though it's all factual. But the point I want to offer is it hasn't happened yet, right? We have choices and we have options. Maybe if you do wake up feeling less than stellar, you're going to be able to rearrange some stuff potentially, right? Or maybe aim to go to bed a little earlier tomorrow. Or on my driving trips, it could mean pulling off to the side of the road for more breaks, right? But even if none of that is possible, I want you to recognize that catastrophizing is what the brain does. It's all part of what our brains do, right? We leap to the worst case scenario. It's all part of how our brains are keeping us safe, keeping us, not taking action. So here's what I want to offer for you to try if you get into this worst case scenario, catastrophizing. I like to go to I'm capable. I think of all the times I've thought these terrible thoughts before and all the terrible things I expected to happen didn't. But even if they did, right, if I can go to I'm capable, that would spur me on to feel capable of dealing with it. And then after thinking that, right, I know whatever happens tomorrow, I'm capable. And then I go back to focusing on where I am, that I'm in bed, and that I'm resting, even if I'm not yet sleeping. One final comment today I want to make is how you handle yourself the next day. So let's say you do have interrupted sleep, right? You wake up feeling tired and lethargic. The first thing I want to ask is if anybody had that night's sleep, would they feel bright-eyed and bushy-tailed in the morning? Would they be ready to get up and get on and create something in the world? Probably not. So while alcohol isn't going to help you improve your sleeping in the long run, telling yourself over and over that you're tired because you overdrank and you're tired, which means you aren't going to be able to get through the day, etc. on repeat, ask us, how is that going to help? Is that going to serve you, or is it going to make you wallow? Now, I'm not saying snap out of it or go to positive, but if you can get to the neutral, right, I didn't have a great night's sleep last night, but that can happen to anyone and I'm okay. Feels a lot more manageable and less catastrophizing. And here's why this matters so much. If you go through the day feeling bad, feeling physically exhausted and telling yourself on repeat that you did this to yourself, telling yourself you're a bad person, telling yourself off for it, blaming yourself for getting no sleep, for feeling useless, and why can't you sleep like your husband or your friends or like a normal person. And you end up doing that, we feel a lot of anger and resentment and frustration, and we direct it at ourselves. And when we feel those things, when those emotions build, as they do during the day, when we get stuck in traffic or something happens at work, or not even anything major, maybe we just, we get through the day reminding ourselves how stupid we were to drink and how stupid it was of us not to get a good night's sleep. What is going to happen as a result of all that thinking? When it comes to the end of the day, right, this next day after, how are we going to be feeling? And what are we going to be seeking? Relief, right? And how have we taught ourselves to feel relief? Through a drink. Cycle closed, habit reinforced, sleep further interrupted. And this is why this topic is so important. So in summary, there are times when we all don't sleep so well. It happens. But while we don't control how we sleep directly, we do control how we talk about ourselves and sleep, whether we're good sleepers and bad sleepers, and whether we want to continue referring to ourselves in that way. We do control how we feel and what we're making it mean when we're lying awake. And we do control how we handle ourselves the next day. And those things together make a humongous difference. That's it for this week. Thank you so much for listening. Now, listen, if what I'm saying on this podcast resonates, maybe you have been convincing yourself that you need alcohol to sleep, I can help. I can help you understand and see how the pattern of overdrinking is unfolding in your brain and build a plan to get you to change that, right? And to get you to the point where you're living your life that you want, regardless of what's in your glass. And it is such freedom. It is the best thing. To get started with me, all it takes is to book some time on my calendar. The initial call is free and you can book it. If you go to 90dayslater.co and click on the big blue button, book a call. Go ahead, go and do it. Stop your interrupted sleep and change your relationship with alcohol forever. All right, I'll see you next week. If you like what you're learning in the podcast and you want to take the work further and achieve total freedom around alcohol, let's talk. I help my clients stop reaching for that first glass of wine the moment 6 p.m. rolls around and they don't miss out on life. And we do it in 90 days. The effect is permanent. Email me for more information on anna@90dayslater.co. And if you did enjoy the show, I'd really appreciate if you'd leave a rating and review to help others find the 90 Days Later podcast.